For decades, getting your first job after college followed a simple formula. You graduated. You found an entry-level position. You did the boring work. You answered emails, prepared reports, researched information, organized spreadsheets, helped senior employees, and made plenty of mistakes. And that was the point. You weren't expected to know everything. You were expected to learn. Because the entry-level job wasn't just a paycheck, it was the first step on a career ladder. But artificial intelligence is starting to change that ladder, and the biggest threat to young workers may not be that AI replaces every job. It may be something more subtle. What happens when AI starts doing the work that people used to perform in order to gain experience? Because if companies can automate the beginner tasks, they may need fewer beginners. And that creates a problem nobody has fully solved yet. If you can't get your first opportunity, how are you supposed to get the experience required for the second one? This isn't science fiction. The Federal Reserve's 2026 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households found that 1 in 4 workers had used generative AI at work during the previous month, and AI adoption is moving quickly. Another Federal Reserve analysis found that by late 2025, about 18% of U.S. firms had adopted AI, while another measure found that around 78% of the labor force worked at firms that had adopted AI. The numbers aren't identical because these surveys measure different things. But the direction is clear. AI is moving from the laboratory into the workplace. And now companies are asking a very expensive question. If software can do part of the work, how many people do we actually need to do it? Imagine a young analyst starting at an investment firm. A few years ago, that person might spend hours gathering data, cleaning spreadsheets, summarizing reports, and preparing a first draft for a senior analyst. Those tasks weren't glamorous, but they taught the junior employee how the business worked. Now imagine AI doing most of that preparation in minutes. The senior employee still makes the final decision, but the junior employee may no longer need to spend hundreds of hours learning through those basic tasks. And that's where the real disruption begins, because AI doesn't have to eliminate an entire occupation to change the labor market. It only has to eliminate enough of the tasks that made entry-level workers useful. Think about how careers traditionally work. Junior employees perform simpler tasks. They learn from senior employees. They gradually take on more responsibility. Eventually, some become managers, specialists, executives, or entrepreneurs. It's a ladder. But what if the bottom rung gets shorter? That's the question companies, universities, and young workers are now facing. And there are already signs that the labor market is becoming more difficult for young people. The Federal Reserve reported that in 2025, 15% of adults under 30 were not working, and said that not being able to find work contributed to that situation. At the same time, 49% of adults under 30 were living with a parent. That doesn't prove AI caused these trends, and we should be careful about making that claim. The economy, interest rates, hiring cycles, education, and many other factors matter. But AI is arriving at exactly the moment when young workers are already trying to break into a competitive labor market, and companies are experimenting with a new model of productivity. Instead of hiring 10 people to perform a large amount of routine work, what if they hire 5 people and give each one AI tools? That's a very attractive proposition for a business. But there's a catch. AI can increase the productivity of an experienced employee. It doesn't automatically create an experienced employee. And that difference could become incredibly important, because experienced workers got their experience somewhere. A senior financial analyst wasn't born knowing how to analyze a company. A senior marketer wasn't born knowing how to build a campaign. A senior lawyer wasn't born knowing how to evaluate a case. A senior software engineer didn't start as a senior engineer. They learned. And a huge amount of that learning happened while doing relatively simple work. That's why the entry-level job isn't just an expense for a company. It's also part of the talent pipeline. Companies hire juniors today because some of them may become the people running important parts of the business tomorrow. But if AI makes junior workers less necessary today, companies could accidentally create a shortage of experienced workers tomorrow. And this is where the story gets interesting, because not everyone believes AI will destroy entry-level work. Some executives argue the opposite. They believe AI will make young workers more productive. Instead of spending hours doing repetitive tasks, a junior employee could use AI to complete the basic work faster and spend more time learning, communicating, solving problems, and making decisions. In that version of the future, AI doesn't remove the bottom rung. It makes the ladder faster. And there is evidence that workers are already seeing some benefits. The Federal Reserve found that 81% of workers who used generative AI agreed that it saves them time. So the future isn't necessarily humans versus AI. It could be humans with AI versus humans without it. And that creates another problem. The definition of an entry-level worker could change. Companies may increasingly expect young employees to arrive with AI skills already developed, not simply knowing how to ask ChatGPT a question, but knowing how to use AI to research, analyze, automate, verify, and improve real work. That means the valuable skill may no longer be simply, I can do this task. It may become, I know how to use AI to do this task better, and I know when the AI is wrong. That second part is critical, because AI can produce impressive answers. It can also produce confident nonsense, and someone still has to judge the output. That means human judgment could become more valuable precisely because AI becomes more capable. But here's the uncomfortable part. If companies demand experienced judgment from entry-level workers, while simultaneously reducing the amount of entry-level work, young workers could face a strange paradox. You need experience to get the job, but you need the job to get the experience. And AI could make that loop harder to escape. So what happens next? There are basically three possible futures. The first is the replacement scenario. Companies automate large amounts of routine white-collar work. Entry-level hiring falls. The career ladder becomes narrower. A smaller number of workers move into high-value positions. And young people without specialized skills face a much harder job market. The second is the productivity scenario. AI handles repetitive tasks. Companies keep hiring junior workers. But each worker becomes dramatically more productive. Instead of spending their first year formatting spreadsheets, they spend that time learning how to interpret the information inside them. Instead of writing every first draft manually, they learn how to direct, edit, fact-check, and improve AI-generated work. In that world, AI doesn't eliminate the career ladder, it accelerates it. And then there's the third possibility, the hybrid scenario. Some entry-level jobs disappear, some are redesigned, and entirely new roles emerge. That's probably the most realistic outcome, because technology rarely changes every occupation in exactly the same way. Some jobs will be heavily automated, others will be augmented, and some will become more valuable because they require human judgment, trust, relationships, creativity, or physical presence. But for young workers, the lesson is already becoming clear. The safest strategy isn't to compete with AI at tasks AI is exceptionally good at. It's to become the person who can use AI while bringing something AI can't easily provide. Judgment, communication, domain expertise, decision-making, leadership, trust, and the ability to understand what actually matters. Because the future employee probably won't be the person who says, I don't use AI. And they probably won't be the person who says, AI does everything for me. The valuable employee will be the person who can say, give me the problem, I'll use AI to move faster, but I'll take responsibility for the answer. And that changes the question we started with. Is AI coming for the first job you get after college? Maybe. But the bigger transformation may be this. AI is coming for the first version of that job. The boring tasks, the repetitive tasks, the work that used to take hours, the work that nobody wanted to do. And ironically, those were often the same tasks that taught young workers how the professional world actually worked. So the challenge for the next generation isn't simply finding a job, it's finding a way to learn. Because if AI changes the bottom of the career ladder, the people who understand how to climb the new one may have a massive advantage. And the question isn't whether AI will change your career. It's whether you'll learn how to use it before your career changes without you.